Fellow teachers of Reddit, what experiences have you had with dumb parents? I substituted in a HS for 5 months to finish off the year for a teacher who was on maternity leave. So I had a student, HS senior, who never did any homework, accounted for 35% of the total grade. I would constantly send emails to the parents, who always responded that they'd deal with it, spoke with the parents at conferences, and kept the admin in the loop 1 week before finals. I sent the notice home that she needed to get a 97% on the final to pass the class and get the credits she needed for graduation. And I even gave her one more chance to turn in past homework for 50% credit. FF to the final, she barely gets a passing grade and therefore can't get the credits, can't graduate, can't enlist in the Air Force like she had intended. The parents come into the office of the school screaming at everyone that they had no clue it would come to this. When we all sat down in an office with the guidance counselor, principal, department head and myself, I reviewed the several notices with them, explained that she had multiple opportunities to gain credit, etc. But refused to do anything. Turns out the wife was hiding the emails and information from her husband and wanted her daughter to fail so she wouldn't join the Air Force and move away from home. Last I heard from the situation, they are not together. The daughter is working at Lowe's, never finished HS, and has 2 kids and multiple arrests for selling drugs. There's a reason I didn't want to pursue teaching as a career after that. Taught college, so my story is nice. Had a student failing horrible, 10%, but would not drop. Whatever, not my dime, not my problem. Anyway, grades come in, and, I guess, his mother has his password to his account, or perhaps he just told her his grade, F, obviously, and I get an angry email insisting that there's no way he could have failed pre-calculus, because my god. His father is an engineer and the student wants to be an engineer and he just has to be good at math. The best part is, when you turn 18 and go to college, you're treated as an adult, even if you don't act like one, and there's a little box you can check that says allow my parents to see my records. Most kids don't check it, and by law I'm not allowed to release any records to anyone, even parents. So I politely informed her that her son is considered an adult, and I was not allowed to release any records, and that she would have to contact him. Of course this prompted a long "I'm going to get you fired" email that I forwarded to my dean, who came to my office for a long laugh. I actually feel pretty bad for the kid. Having a helicopter mom like that at that age will do him no favors. My mother is a K-12 teacher for a charter school that does homeschooling, with the teacher checking in and reviewing things about once a week. It's meant for students who have difficulty in the public school system, which can range from dropouts to super smart kids to non-English speakers, and parents who don't have the time to do full homeschool. I used to help with grading the maths and science stuff, so I have tons of stories. One parent during the school year kept taking her daughter on trips to different countries and then asking my mother to extend her work. We are talking about 5 or 6 trips during the year. That would be fine if it was laid out at the start of the school year and they could schedule accordingly, but this parent would make these trips spontaneously. Like, in a few days, we are going to Russia, so she can't meet you next week, like we scheduled 2 days ago. Another parent really pissed off my mother. 2 kids, brothers, both seniors, almost done with high school. All that was left was some sort of state testing done in a classroom. One brother shows up, the other isn't there. My mom, proctor for the exam, asks where his brother is. He replies, he didn't feel like coming. She tells him that this is all he needs to graduate, so text him and get him to come here. He doesn't show. Halfway through the test, the kid's mother storms in the door, yelling at my own mother, telling her off for making her son feel ashamed and humiliated. She flips a table over, no joke, grabs her son that's there, who looked like he wanted to die. Keep in mind, he's a senior, like 17 years old or so, and storms out the door. Both brothers fail to get their HS degree, as neither had completed the state test. The crazy mom then writes a scathing email to my mother's supervisor, talking about how she had been lying to her, disregarding her problems and her children's education, and attempting to sabotage their chance at graduation. I have more, may post them up later, if anyone is interested. Oh lordy, where to start? I teach 11th grade, sat in an IEP, special ed, meeting. The parents wanted all of these accommodations for the student, even though we kept bringing up his daily weed habit. The accommodations still got on the plan with a promise from him to cut back. Parents asking us how to parent their child. He gets upset when I take his box. A kid kept forgetting his backpack. I asked him if he had his cell phone or shoes. Obviously he did. So I told him to put those items in his backpack when he gets home. His mom thought I was a genius. One parent was exasperated that their child with ADHD wasn't doing college level work. 2 minutes into a phone conference with the mom, she compared her son with her other kids and lamented that her son wasn't as good at school as they were. This is the saddest. I have a deaf student. On parent teacher night, the student's parents come to my class with her. I quickly deduced that the mom and the dad do not know sign language. We talked about her progress and her wanting to go into medicine. I had to convince the dad she was capable. He kept talking her down and demanding she speak. This is a majority of my parent interactions. I would say 1/3 are normal, but yield no change. My mom teaches early childhood education. Basically 5 to 6-year-olds. One of them had major signs of autism. My mom said it seemed like it, and after reading several books on the subject, I thought so too. This also helped spawn my idea for a autism-friendly restaurant, but we'll talk about that later. Primarily, he had the basic signs such as a lack of imagination, social skills, and he never ate anything other than a PB&J sandwich. He would scream if offered otherwise. He also always had to be on a schedule. Since I walked to that school from my school, I always played with him. We would go to the unused library and play piano. I taught him to play songs like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. He loved it. He would tell me he loved piano. We decided to let his parents know. They denied it all. So my mom decided to bring the school in, had him observed. Sure enough, the psychologist agreed with us. He is in 1st grade now. It's my most heartwarming memory I have. I saw him at Walmart. He took me to the toy section, found one of those demo pianos, and played Mary Had a Little Lamb. His parents bought him a toy piano and showed him how to read the music. He is getting treatment now. I'm crying while writing this. I miss ya little bro. As for my idea, it'd just be a colorful restaurant. Simple food. Friendly people. Same waitresses. etc. TLDR taught autistic kid to play piano and excels ahead of his class. May skip a grade. I don't want to call any parents dumb. In my experience, they are mostly doing the best they can for their kids, even if that best isn't what we'd hope for. However, I did have a student who came to my student teaching classroom 2 grades below reading level and similarly behind in other subjects. She really wanted to learn, but she had some cognitive issues that didn't qualify her for special ed, but meant that she required a lot of time and personal attention to learn well. For that entire school year, I worked individually with her before and after school, while she was waiting for the bus, or after she'd been dropped off, and often during her recess and art/gym/library, which she asked me to do, because she wanted to learn, and wanted the one-on-one attention. She improved markedly in reading and in writing, which is what we were concentrating on. She wasn't caught up at the end of the year, but she was a hell of a lot closer. She failed the year, but because she had a speech issue, her parents could decide to send her to the next grade anyway. I tried to convince her parents that she should be held back a year, because with another year of intensive help, which I was going to find a way to secure for her, I thought that she could be close to or on grade level, and could possibly keep up with the other students after that. They refused because they didn't want the other students to make fun of her. I have no idea what happened after that, because I moved to another state, but I bet it wasn't good. Telling someone that their kid has ADS as a teacher is a bad idea. First of all, because you don't know what's going on at home, and even if you do, you're not a doctor. It's not your job to give out diagnoses. It's enough to just tell that parent that their child is having significant problems with X, and to try to learn more about them, so you can help their kid. Calling their kid crazy is not helpful. And no, your kid might have AD does not sound too much better than your kid might be crazy to a concerned parent. especially to an immigrant. I come from an immigrant family, and my teachers in elementary school always complained about me. My family doctor wanted to put me on ad meds. My parents were having absolutely none of it. If they had heard the ad thing from a teacher, and not a doctor, I think they would have punched that teacher in the face. I went on to 4.0 GPA all through high school, graduating from a top university, and I'm currently in medical school. I have never been medicated a single day in my life, and I'm so thankful that my parents never even considered that as an option. Some kids just struggle when they're younger, even if everything at home is fine. Immigrant kids have it hard. My story is not unique. Plenty of my immigrant friends also had elementary school teachers or pediatricians suggest ad, and immigrant parents will not take it well. I'm sorry, but if I were this kid's parent, I would react the exact same way. Not me, but a situation that happened in my school. We get a new student the last week of May with only 4 weeks of school left. In this school year, this student has only attended 2.5 weeks of school due to school anxiety. He has a whole team of professionals, his mother, and a one-on-one aide that work with him. This is also his third school, kicked out of his 2 previous ones, and he is in 2nd grade. He had a generally good first day, fist bumped his teacher, did a little bit of stuff, then went home, and told his mother that it was the worst day in his life. Mom comes to school all up in arms about how we are ruining her precious little snowflake. The next day, his classroom teacher tried to get him to do some writing with her. The kid looks straight in her eyes and says, "My mother said I don't have to do anything. Are you calling my mother a liar?" Cue mother the next day, all up in arms, because the teacher called my precious snowflake a liar. So, due to his school anxiety, he doesn't have to do any work, interact with teachers, make any movement whatsoever, except sit like a lump in his seat. The teacher, when giving an assignment to the class, has to specify to him, "But you don't have to do anything if you don't want to." It's by far the stupidest situation I've ever witnessed. TLDR. 2nd grader who is professionally advised to not do any work at school because of batshit crazy mother. Edit, not real names. My mom is K and the other teacher is A then. Thanks Scaffold Spiller. I'm a little late, but here's one my mom told me when I asked her the question. It was her first year teaching 5th grade, and she gave her kids a spelling test. She caught a student cheating on that test by changing his answers after grading and insisting it was there before, despite eraser marks, and decided to talk to the student and the parents. My mom is really laid back and often will give her students second chances that the other teachers, who are all stricter than her, would not give. So anyways, my mom calls the parents and says, "Hi Mr. Smith, I'm calling to inform you I caught your son cheating on a test. Since this is his first time, I will allow him to retake it tomorrow during recess in my class." The dad was furious. He started yelling that his son would never do such a thing and how my mom was a horrible teacher and started cussing her out. So my mother asked another teacher who had been teaching for a while for help. The other teacher decided to get the principal involved and show the dad how his tantrums will not get him what he wants in this school and how his childish actions make it worse for his son. The principal called the dad and said, "Hello Mr. Smith. Due to your disapproval of K's teachings and punishments, we feel it would be best for your son to go to Mrs. A's class instead." The dad, thinking he got his way, agreed. What the dad did not know was that the son's new teacher was the strictest in the school and was infamous among the kids. So the boy switched classes, but he was in tears because my mom was the kind of teacher who gave out prizes and never yelled, and now he was leaving that class. The son actually was okay with taking the retake, but the dad was the one who refused. My mom felt pretty bad for the kid. After the end of the day, the teacher comes up to my mom and tells her what she told the father. The teacher called and informed the father that the son will get a 0 on the test he took in my mom's class, will not be getting a retake, and that the son will have no recess for 2 weeks. And the next day, guess who called asking to have their kid put back in my mom's class? The dad probably learned his lesson, and the son probably did too. Sorry if this isn't grammatically correct, I'm just tired, so it may be messed up. I used to work at a daycare for kids aged 18 months 3 years. There was one little 3-year-old boy that used to call all the teachers stupid bitches and cunts. He also had extreme anger problems that led to violence towards the other kids. He would often hit, kick, spit, and choke out other kids. Despite this, he could be the absolutely sweetest boy and crave being held by teachers and one-on-one time where he could get full undivided attention. We all dedicated ourselves to making sure we gave him special time to work on these issues. His dad was in jail and he would often talk about how scared he was to be put in prison and other issues at home. We discussed this with the mom and asked her to help with his anger by helping him find other ways of expressing it, as well as work on his swearing. All she said was she tries to work on his swearing, but he sees it on TV and she can't help that, and that he inherited his anger issues from his dad, who was both verbally and physically abusive towards her, hence why he was in jail. It was so frustrating to work with a woman who didn't think she could control what her 3-year-old son watched on TV and was resigned to believing her son's anger could not be controlled because of his dad. As a 3-year-old, he was mirroring actions he had seen, and she didn't understand that by teaching the child proper behavior and outlets for his anger, it would drastically improve. Once dad got out of jail, she pulled her son from school and moved to another state with the guy. I don't know if this is really dumb, but weird. I guess I worked for a while as the assistant band director at a private high school, and one night after a football game, the director and myself were sitting in his office talking. One of the members of the band booster organization came in and closed the door and asked to talk with us. We agreed and gave him our full attention. He then explained how he had a marvelous plan that would help recruit for the band, which was to fix the election for homecoming queen. He told us that we could send mailers to every senior male. Only seniors males got to vote for homecoming queen, encouraging them to vote for one specific band girl, chosen by the band director, of course, and also some kind of incentive such as coupons or monetary contribution. The band director and myself shared puzzled looks over his incredibly thought out plan on how to fix the homecoming queen race. He was convinced that through this, we would raise awareness of the band program, and then our numbers would skyrocket. We didn't tell him no, but we didn't tell him yes. Instead, we told him we would think about it, and he left the office. After he left, the band director looked at me and said, "What the fuck? No." I've mentioned this story before, but here goes. I was a tar in a 3rd grade classroom. We had the parents of an African American child request to meet with us at the start of the year. They informed us they did not want their son to learn anything about African American history. Nothing. They did not want him to learn about slavery, the Civil War, civil rights, MLK, nada. They felt this knowledge would hinder him in life and hold him back from reaching his full potential. The teacher and I were shocked, but had to do as the parents wished. That February we studied African American history as many schools in the US do. Each time we had a lesson, we had to send that boy to the library to read for 45 minutes. We couldn't tell him why or what we were doing in the classroom without him. We couldn't display any of our books or projects in the classroom in case he saw them. It was so weird and the poor kid felt so left out. I don't know whatever happened to him. He's probably in 8th or 9th grade now, and for all I know still has no clue about Martin Luther King Jr. Edit. This was at a magnet elementary school with a predominantly African American and Hispanic student base. The boy in question appeared normal despite whatever his parents were teaching him or neglecting to teach him at home. He had many friends, was extremely polite, and was crazy about Batman, so I'm assuming he saw some television. We had many other African American students in our classroom, majority of the students in fact, and they were so excited come February. I mention the month because February is African American History Month in the US, and when most schools concentrate on it, they were begging to do biographies on famous African Americans. We couldn't display any of their posters though in case the one boy saw them. In my first year of teaching, I was taking my class of 5-year-old children on a mosque visit as part of their religious education lessons. So the letter for parents, asking for permission, goes out on Thursday and I get the inevitable Islamophobic backlash from the racist parents the next day. One of the kids in my class grandfather decided to come right up to me and rant about how to him, all religion is poison and his grandson doesn't have the capacity yet to understand what faith is. Fun fact, he had no issue when his grandson was the angel Gabriel in our nativity point. Now, I've never seen this guy in my life. He's never come and picked up his grandson before, so this was the first impression I was getting of him. Despite me repeatedly telling him that I don't plan the trips, pick the curriculum or even teach as that was taught by my cover teacher, he goes on and on and on, trying to justify his racist views. Then comes up with this gem. For the sake of reference here, I'm white British. Point him. May I ask what your religious beliefs are? Me. You may not. Him. See, that makes me think you're Muslim. His ludicrous presumptive logic almost tipped me over the edge there and then, but I held my tongue. After he finally stormed off, the child in question's mother, who was standing off to the side at this point, said, "I'm so ashamed." But nothing else. No apology, nothing. Oh, she was a police community support officer at the time. Fast forward 2 years, and this kid who, at the time, was higher to middle ability level in the academic subjects, is now in the bottom 6 or so across the board. He has probably made about half a year progress in 2 years. I have to wonder how much of this is due to his home life. I'm not a teacher, but when I was in middle school, a kid put a larger dose of his parents' sleeping pills in our teacher's Diet Coke. After lunch, we all tried to get back into the still locked classroom, always locked at lunch, with no luck. The principal unlocked the door to find the teacher on the floor. He had passed out and hit his head on a desk. The kid immediately started crying and confessed. He was expelled immediately. The next day, during class, the kid's parents came in screaming at the teacher, calling him names and accusing him of setting their son up and telling him how stupid he was for leaving his Coke unattended. During the middle of their fit of rage, the principal came in with the kid that drugged the teacher, who was expelled the day before, and she politely waited for the parents to finish demoralizing our teacher and let us know that he would be rejoining our class. Our poor teacher was doing everything to appear strong and hold back tears. Years later, I found out that the parents threatened to accuse the teacher of touching their son if they didn't allow him back into school. Long story short, kid drugged teacher, got expelled. Parents threatened accusations of the teacher molesting their son to get him back into school. My mom is a staff assistant at a middle-income elementary school, so she sees things coming from all over the spectrum. Unfortunately, the dumb parent experience comes from a woman who raises her children as if they are all to grow up, to become drug lords and pimps, and take out the system, or whatever. Anyways, her 7-year-old daughter is probably the most vile little girl you could imagine, and most of her vocabulary comes from the bottom-feeding perspective that her mother perpetuates. The only problem is that there is no way to punish this girl for her obscenities, because she has already been expelled from 2 schools, so the one she is at now is her only option. The child also cannot be suspended, because it's entirely inefficient, because she will come back and brag to the staff at school that her mother took her out to ice cream, or whatever. I would say the nail in the coffin for this girl would be her mother's enabling tendencies, because she frequently and randomly comes into school insisting that the mostly white administrators are part of some conspiracy to hold down minority students, because this girl is part of a smaller demographic in our area. I'm not a teacher, however I witnessed a crazy parent while I was in the office during my senior year of high school. I managed to fuck up my leg during gym class and couldn't walk properly, so while I waited for my mom to pick me up, I was in the office, stuck in a chair with a rice pack on my leg. About 10 minutes into my waiting, an angry woman comes storming into the office. It was only myself and front desk lady in there, with the principal, dean, and guidance counselor in their separate offices. Anyways, this lady just starts screaming at the lady at the desk, who has no control over anything other than answering phones and issuing lunch tickets. I want to know why my daughter is failing 3 of her classes. Fix it now, you stupid fat cow. The angry mother screamed at this poor, innocent lady at the desk. Naturally, all 3 of the big guys come out of their offices, each of them trying hard to usher into an office. Any office. Crazy mom wasn't having it and demanded to know why her daughter was failing. Of course, no one had an idea who her daughter was, because no names were given. After 5 minutes of the crazy mom screaming at the 3 big guys, they finally got a name of her daughter. The teachers who led the classes this girl was failing was called out of their rooms. Luckily, 2 had free period at the time, so only 1 had to have their class covered. The daughter was pulled into the office at all point. Crazy mom was finally ushered into the meeting room with the 3 teachers and dean and guidance counselor. They shut the door, so I didn't get to hear anything else other than a few more shrieks from the crazy mom. I was picked up shortly after that and told my mom all about it. I had to thank my mom for not being a crazy person, but then again, I wasn't failing any of my classes. I'm not a teacher, but I'll be damned if the story doesn't fit right into this thread. In high school, there was this kid that Noon really liked, but this wasn't that bad for him because he was a very religious Jewish kid and spent most of his time in Israel. By most, I mean we'd see him for a couple of weeks once every couple of months. Obviously, his grades reflected this. Come parent/teacher conferences, and I need volunteer hours, so I sign up to help out. I get assigned to helping the guidance counselors. My job is to sit on front of their office, have every visiting parent sign in, and come into the office after 5 minutes to tell the parent that their time is up and they have to leave. In comes the kid, looking like a lamb being led to the sacrificial altar, and his fuming mother. Oh ho ho, his mother. I actually had a short history with him and his mom. I went to tutoring with him, and the tutor moved me out of the class into the lobby type place. He had to focus on my work. This kid's mom is there, and while I'm working, she's standing right behind me, reading my work over my shoulder. I start to turn the page, and she tells me to stop. She's still looking. I didn't really know what to do, but I politely told her to back up a bit. She goes off about how her son is going to go to Stuyvesant, one of, if not the, best schools in the area at the time, and no, he didn't get in, and how he's a genius. He wasn't dumb, but a genius he was not, and how she needs to see that she's paying for. I mean, there's some truth to that, but she's a cunt nonetheless. Fortunately, the head tutor, a nice old Russian man, told her to back off. Anyway, back to the story. She storms into the guidance counselor's office, pretty much ignoring my feeble attempts to get her to sign in, starts flipping a sheet. I have to wait outside, so I don't hear much. 5 minutes are up. I don't really want to interrupt the raging sheet storm, and there isn't anyone else waiting, so I give her another few minutes. I walk in to tell the guidance counselor that time's up, and she gives me this strange look of bafflement, concern, and resignation and tells me not to bother. 10 minutes later they finally leave. Also, another kid comes in with a stereotypical Asian tiger mom who pretty much does the same thing, except her son had a low 90s average. I don't really know much about that except for some stories about how she screams and slaps him in front of the swim team when he's not doing well, so I won't really go into that too much. Anyway, the first kid ended up being allowed to make up everything he missed and ended up with a low 80s average on the grounds that his expeditions to Israel were a religious matter or some shit. Anyway, he dropped out halfway through senior year because they instituted a sort of insta-fail policy for people who missed more than 20 days of school, so it didn't really matter. TLDR, kid misses almost all of the marking period, obviously ends up failing. His mom comes to the guidance counselor and flips a sheet for 20 minutes, and he gets to make up the work on account of it being a religious matter. Drops out anyway. Also, a tangent illustrating the extent of his mom's batshit insanity. Not a teacher, but my teacher and I were both chewed out by a new kid's parents in 6th grade. So this new person joined in the middle of the school year. The kid had good grades, so my teacher instructed I pass my comprehensive class notes, I was first in class, to him, so that the kid could keep a copy and catch up. His parents came to my home, took the notes, while rudely imposing themselves on my parents, and making mean comments about our home. We live in subsidized government accommodation. My parents were too polite to say anything, so they handed my books over to them and kept quiet. 2 weeks later, and my books have not been returned. I keep telling the teacher, and she sends notes home. This was back in the 90s, but to no avail. Finally, the parents come to school one day and fling my notebooks at my teacher. They call me out and bitch at me too, saying I was an uncooperative low-class person for not helping their son. They screamed at the teacher for favoritism. She held to tests which I topped, and their kid got only a few marks less, and that she had a plan to reduce her son's grades. The mother shook the teacher, and the father came and slapped me hard. I was dumbfounded. Luckily the other teachers heard the commotion and came swooping in. By the end of the day, the kid was expelled, and his father reported to the police by the school. TLDR new kid's parents attack and physically assault teacher and me because they believe the teacher is playing favorites. I worked in a classroom where the teacher was out for several months on maternity leave. One of the kids was a brilliant hyperactive girl who would do well if she could just be a bit more self-disciplined. So we worked on it for about 6 weeks. She was getting so much better. Her social interaction with the rest of the class was great. Her classmates saw her as a horrible nuisance at first and came to see her as the funny, smart, and caring girl she was. She was much happier because her work was getting high scores and she was getting the attention she craved and privileges that went with being a high-working student. It was all roses and sunshine in the classroom. Then she came in one day with the longest face and told me her parents were getting divorced. She still did well, but was understandably not the perky girl we were used to in the class. Her mom came in and told the school that the classroom was causing her daughter to be depressed. There was an assessment given by the girl's grandmother, who did classroom assessments before she retired, so my student did not act the way she normally does. The assessment was given at the busiest, rowdiest time in our day, and I was told by the powers that be that I need to stop working with the student on her behavior because it was what the mother wanted. There was a weekly review so they could make sure I was abiding by the decision, so I stopped. It's not like I lacked students who could benefit with the extra help that the mother didn't want. By the end of my time in the classroom, we lost all the ground we had covered. I'm pretty sure the mom was a reason why the teacher had been letting the girl do whatever she felt like in the class, and I wish I'd got a heads up before jumping into it.